Prime Minister Boris Johnson.
Mr. Speaker, thank you very much. And with your permission, I will make a statement on the government's COVID winter plan. For the first time since this wretched virus took hold, we can see a route out of the pandemic. The breakthroughs in treatment, in testing and vaccines mean that the scientific cavalry is now in sight.
He seems to like his military stuff, doesn't he? Like the cavalry. Don't you use the cavalry to smash down the lines? To send everybody scattering? Make it easier to pick them all off afterwards?
And we know in our hearts that next year we will succeed.
Succeed at what, Boris? Because the only thing I'm seeing at the moment is you and all your little cronies actually trying to destroy the whole of this society at the minute. Klaus Schwab, one of your really good mates, is he? You know, the Great Reset. Don't sound so fucking great to me.
By the spring, these advances should reduce the need for the restrictions we've endured in 2020 and make the whole concept of a COVID lockdown redundant.
By the spring there'll be, a lot more people not in work because of your bullshit testing. So you'll be sending more people home and businesses are just virtually going to shut down because they won't be able to keep staffing. Unless they take one of your grants, which you're going to want paying back at some point. But some companies don't want your money. So yeah, you're pretty certain it's going to be successful at fucking this country over, aren't you?
When that moment comes, it will have been made possible by the sacrifices of millions of people across the UK.
And by sacrifice, you mean giving everything up because they were too stupid to fucking not think for themselves and listen to your shite. And with some of the shit you actually come out with, because it's been noticed, you're a bit of a fucking Satanist. It's been noted. It's been spotted. 33 and tripods. Really interesting, that. Netanyahu will be keeping his eye on that one.
I'm acutely conscious that no other peacetime Prime Minister has asked so much of the British people, and just as our country has risen to every previous trial, so it has responded this time, and I am deeply grateful.
Deeply grateful that so many have fallen for one of your suck-up fucking projects again. That's been running for centuries, just screwing people along with the shit you lot fucking create. You're a fucking parasitic bunch of bastards. Plain and simple.
But the hard truth, Mr. Speaker, is that we're not there yet. First, we must get through winter without the virus spreading out of control and squandering our hard-won gains at exactly the time when the burden on the NHS is always greatest. Our winter plan is designed to carry us safely to spring.
Carry us safely to spring? I wouldn't trust you to empty a spittoon out of a door and tip it out on the street.
In recent weeks, families and businesses in England have once again steadfastly observed nationwide restrictions.
Shopkeepers have observed? Hold on. No, they closed because they didn't want your fucking little muggy bastards coming round, shutting them up and giving them a fucking fine. That came under duty. Essentially, it was coercion and adherence. And if you don't do what we say, you're going to get a fine. Essentially, that's just fucking monies with menaces. Because you're a bunch of criminal thugs.
And they've managed to slow the growth of new cases and ease the worst pressures on our NHS. I can therefore confirm the national restrictions in England will end on the 2nd of December and they will not be renewed.
you couldn't renew them restrictions if you wanted because nobody's falling for your shit anymore. Essentially, people are just calling you out for bullshit. I mean, how many times did they actually go on Wikipedia to get all their information from?
From next Wednesday, people will be able to leave their home for any purpose and meet others in outdoor public spaces subject to the rule of 6. Collective worship, weddings, and outdoor sports can resume, and shops, personal care, gyms, and the wider leisure sector can reopen. But without sensible precautions, we would risk the virus escalating into a winter or New Year surge. The incidence of the disease is, alas, still widespread in many areas. So we're not going to replace national measures with a free-for-all.
That didn't sound very Boris, did it? We're not gonna. We're not gonna. There's Mr. Latin vocalising for you. We're not gonna.
The status quo anti-COVID.
A free-for-all with the status quo anti-COVID? When did they release that? I don't think I've heard that single.
We're going to go back instead to a regional tiered approach, applying the toughest measures where COVID is most prevalent.
Toughest measures where it's most prevalent. In other words, if you don't do as we say, we're going to come round and we're going to take more money off you. And we're going to lock you up even harder. And we're going to make all your shops shut because you're a set of bastards. Because you didn't do as we told you. Fucking childish.
And while the previous local tiers did cut the number and cut the R number.
Oh, not your dreaded R number. Well, you mean that one that you've been applying to test results? And not the actual weekly test that you've been doing because people weren't actually doing it weekly, so you couldn't actually get a decent figure off it. So you could pick and choose which results gave you the best results for that week, so you could just do what you wanted and change the legislation and shit, couldn't you? I mean, if they actually tell you that at one point there's 650 people have tested positive, and this week there was only 150 people took part, well, that means that quite a lot of people didn't take part the week after, doesn't it? You know, your error rate's a bit shit. Like, bullshit.
They were not quite enough to reduce it below 1. So the scientific advice, I'm afraid, is that as we come out, our tiers need to be made tougher.
They're not listening to us. They're not doing as we say. We'll have to be tougher with them. Let's say they are still over 1, and we're not giving up until you do what we say. Because we want air below 1, and we don't want to look at the other results that give us an air below 1 yet.
In particular, in Tier 1, people should work from home wherever possible. In Tier 2, alcohol may only be served in hospitality settings as part of a substantial meal. In Tier 3, indoor entertainment, hotels, and other accommodation will have to close, along with all forms of hospitality except for delivery and takeaways. And I'm very sorry, obviously, for the unavoidable hardship that this will cause for business owners who've already endured so much disruption this year.
For the business owners who've already suffered so much hardship this year already, you're sorry. I just don't think that cuts it anymore, Boris. They've been playing along, and you're meant to have, what was it again? A more level playing field with the, the restrictions. And what do we get? Oh, this same shit 3-tier crap.
Mr. Speaker, unlike the previous arrangements, tiers will now be a uniform set of rules. We've also, and that's to say we won't have negotiations on additional measures with each region. It's a uniform set of rules. And we've learnt from experience that there are some things we can do differently. So from the 10 p.m. closing time for hospitality, we're going to change that so that it is last orders at 10 with closing at 11. In tiers 1 and 2, spectator sports and business events will be free to resume inside and outside with capacity limits and social distancing, providing more consistency with indoor performances in theatres and concert halls. We'll also strengthen the enforcement ability of local authorities, including specially trained officers and new powers to close down premises that pose a risk to public health.
So now we know exactly what you mean by more uniform. Essentially just more police with a bit more stricter control on whether they can just shut you down or not, because essentially you're just employing thugs. Mindless, jobs worth thugs who couldn't uphold the law if you actually built them a brick wall and shoved it up their arse. They don't understand what they're reading. They don't understand what they're actually applying to people. And they seem to be either, one, completely oblivious to the bullshit that you're telling them because of the Official Secrets Act, or they're complicit in it, which means they're just as bad as fucking you.
Later this week, I should say, we will announce which areas will fall into which tier, I hope on Thursday, based on analysis of cases.
God, here we are with these fucking cases again. What were cases again? Stated by the government, waiting to go on a ventilator, or on a ventilator and clinically tested. That was a case. All these people have just got the sniffles until they've actually been clinically diagnosed. So in other words, you keep feeding people bullshit again.
In all age groups, especially the over 60s, also looking at the rate by which cases are rising or falling, the percentage of those tested in a local population who have COVID, and the current and projected pressures on the NHS.
Oh no! Projected pressures. You mean somebody's come up with an idea and now you're just going to apply it, even though it might not stand up to anything, and the information you could be putting into it to actually get that information is bullshit. Plucked out of the sky because, oh, that number sounds good, or that sounds like a good average. Did they all come to a consensus on it? Did they all come to agreement? Nobody acquiesced. Well, except for the actual proper data, possibly.
I'm sorry to say, we expect that more regions will fall, at least temporarily, into higher levels than before. But by using these tougher tiers...
Oh, don't tell us you're fucking sorry. You're not fucking sorry. You're loving that bit. We're going to lock everybody up harder than before. We're going to be even stricter with them because we can. Because you're like a little fucking child with a new fucking toy. God, I can't wait until that toy breaks and fucking takes your fingers off.
And by using rapid turnaround tests on an ever greater scale to drive R below 1 and keep it there, it should be possible for areas to move down the tiering scale to lower levels of restrictions.
Do you notice how they seem to use that sort of thing? And normally when you come across a tiering system, the idea is you get to the top. Just like the pyramid schemes and all the rest of it. The idea is you get to the top. That's where it's safest. That's where it's the best. You notice how they want you to step down on the tiers. They don't want you climbing up. They want you going down. They want to keep you down there. It's all a mind game.
By maintaining the pressure on the virus, we can also enable people to see more of their family and friends over Christmas. Mr. Speaker, I can't say that Christmas will be normal this year, but in a period of adversity, time spent with loved ones is even more precious for people of all faiths and none. We all want some kind of Christmas. We need it. We certainly feel we deserve it. But what we don't want is to throw caution to the winds and allow the virus to flare up again, forcing us all back into lockdown in January. So to allow families to come together while minimizing the risk.
It's never stopped you sending people off to war and everything though, does it? You know, you politicians, you always get together with the foreign politicians, you have a big banner, you don't get anywhere, and then next minute somebody's going over there and shooting bullets off, but it's never you lot. You always send somebody else to do your dirty work. So why are you trying to attempt to feel fucking sorry for what you do? This is the same sort of persecution you're actually inflicting on the public now.
We're working with the devolved administrations.
The devolved parliament and the whole, Brexit and leaving the EU. Yeah, don't leave them out. Just before we go, let's give them a little hand up. Let's give them a week off before we turn everything back into the territories. I think legislation. I find it interesting that certain islands comes along with financial things to do with legislation. The most interesting one is one island and the use of chemical weapons also has monetary fraud goes along with it. Surprising what you find in legislation.
On a special time-limited Christmas dispensation, embracing the whole of the United Kingdom and reflecting the ties of kinship across our islands.
Kinship across the whole of the United Kingdom and our islands. Yeah, because that's not happening after the end of December, is it? No, because United Kingdom will be gone. Won't be united anymore.
But this virus obviously is not going to grant a Christmas truce. It doesn't know it's Christmas.
First honest thing he said, the virus doesn't know it's Christmas.
Mr. Speaker, and families will need to make a careful judgment about the risk of visiting elderly relatives. We'll be publishing guidance for those who are clinically extremely vulnerable on how to manage the risks in each tier, as well as over Christmas. As we work to suppress the virus with these local tiers, 2 scientific breakthroughs will ultimately make these restrictions obsolete. As soon as a vaccine is approved, we will dispense it as quickly as possible. But given that this can't be done immediately, we will simultaneously use rapid turnaround testing, the lateral flow testing, that gives results within 30 minutes to identify those without symptoms so they can isolate and avoid transmission. We're beginning to deploy these tests in our NHS and in care homes in England, so people will once again be able to hug and hold hands with loved ones instead of waving at them through a window. By the end of the year, this will allow every care home resident to have 2 visitors who can be tested twice a week. Care workers looking after people in their own homes will be offered weekly tests from today. And from next month, weekly tests will also be available to staff in prisons, food manufacturing, and those delivering and administering COVID vaccines. We're also using testing, as the House knows, to help schools and universities stay open and testing will enable students to know they can go home safely for Christmas, and indeed back from home to university. But there is another way of using these rapid tests. That is to follow the example of Liverpool, where in the last 2.5 weeks, over 200,000 people.
2.5 weeks, and they haven't even reached 250,000 people. Really? So you've got jackboots on the ground.
Have taken part in a community testing, contributing to a very substantial fall in infections.
I wonder how that works then. You get tested and the infection rate falls. Maybe they're using the wrong test. Maybe you should get that one out, testing for negativity.
So together with NHS Test and Trace and our fantastic armed forces.
Together with our Test and Trace. Oh, you shouldn't, really, you shouldn't.
We will now launch a major community testing programme, offering all local authorities in Tier 3 areas in England a 6-week surge of testing.
A 6-week surge of testing? Does that mean they're going to plug you in? Yeah, sit in this chair while we, take a test off you.
The system is untried and there are, of course, many unknowns. But if it works...
Of course it's untried and there's many unknowns. Like what they're looking for? Like what causes it? Who's going to pay the bill? Is the electric board involved? Do you need to bring your own generator? Can you run it off batteries?
We should be able to offer those who test negative the prospect of fewer restrictions, for example, meeting up in certain places with others who have also tested negative.
Did you test negative? Oh yeah, I tested negative. You tested negative as well. Oh, we feel so special. Fuck's sake.
And those towns and regions which engage in community testing will have a much greater chance of easing the rules, the tiering that they currently endure. Mr. Speaker, we will also use daily testing to ease another restriction that has impinged on many lives. We will seek to end automatic isolation.
Yeah, we're having to end this isolation thing because when people have actually got full of a cold and everything and been tested and they've come up negative, well, 3 other people in the same house have come up positive. Yeah, that's tended to throw a bit of a fucking spanner in the works, doesn't it? You've got a cold. They've all got the same cold. 3 of them are positive and 1 of them's negative. Yeah. Problem.
For close contacts of those found positive. Beginning in Liverpool later this week, contacts who are tested every day for a week will only need to isolate if they themselves test positive.
Take the test, give us your data, start acting like normal again. That's the deal. Nothing else. That's it. Take the test, give us your data, give us your details, and you can virtually go back to normal.
If successful, this approach will be extended across the health system next month and to the whole of England from January.
Yeah, we've got to bung it out and actually get it in writing in the legislation before the end of the EU bullshit. Because otherwise, if they try and do it after, they're going to have to argue and fight with the EU. seeing while they're still within the UK as it stands, not just a territory, they can actually do it now, so that's why they're rushing that through. Get it in writing before it actually ends with the EU.
And of course, we're working with the devolved administrations to ensure that Wales, Scotland, Northern Ireland also benefit, as they should and will, from these advances in rapid testing.
So, if this test is so good, why don't they just make a shitload more of this test? You can test yourself at home, and you just stay at home. What the fuck do we need a vaccine for?
But clearly, the most hopeful advance of all is how vaccines are now edging ever closer to liberating us from the virus, demonstrating emphatically that this is not a pandemic without end. We can take great heart from today's news, which has the makings of a wonderful British scientific achievement. The vaccine, developed with astonishing speed by Oxford University and AstraZeneca, is now one of 3 capable of delivering a period of immunity.
Hold on. What do you mean, a period of immunity? A period of immunity. It means it don't fucking work. In the long term, it doesn't fucking work. It's like every other vaccine for the coronavirus. Doesn't fucking work. Only works for a few. What is it? What were the figures they gave? 25% it actually works for without any adverse effects. I think it's up to around 65% have adverse effects. And then the rest of the percentage, there's a good chance you die. Yes, that good. And this only works for a period. So in other words, that's why they've got years and years on all this legislation they're putting in. Because they've got no intention of it going away. Because they're not fixing the fucking problem. Period.
We don't yet know when any will be ready and licensed, but we have ordered 100 million doses of the Oxford vaccine and over 350 million in total, more than enough for everyone in the UK, the Crown dependencies, and the overseas territories.
Yeah, we had to buy the one from the Oxford University. It's a bit of a clause type of thing. You know, when your government actually invests your taxes into it and they need to make money back on it because they built literally a great big whole place to actually produce this fucking vaccine there. They actually pulled plans forward for that place by about 2 to 3 years and got the place built. So yeah, they've spent a shitload of fucking money on that place. So that's why they're buying so much from it. Oh no, sorry, no, you're buying so much of it. Us, we are. You know, us that didn't have any say in whether this place should be built or not. You know, that type of thing. You know, choice. You know, your right to choose. Yeah, that didn't work out, did it?
And the NHS is preparing a nationwide immunisation programme ready next month, the like of which we've never witnessed.
No, because if it's anything like it's organised like the Canadians, oh, it's going to be an absolute fucking joke.
Mr. Speaker, 2020 has been in many ways a tragic year when so many have lost loved ones and faced financial ruin, and this will be still a hard winter.
Tragic? A hard winter? Even I had the fucking sense to say, oh, if there's a virus that's that bad, shut the fucking border. How fucking retarded do you need to be? Oh, no, you've already answered that, haven't you? Yeah, because you're in that position. Sorry, I can't be that stupid to run this fucking country.
Christmas cannot be normal, and there's a long road to spring.
It's winter. Spring's a long way off. Apparently, we're going round corners. I hope that fucking train's not there. Oh, just no. Oh, you've got to hold out. Right. Something really odd came up. The reason you've got to hold out is quite possibly you're going to see power cuts. Yeah, I hear a thing or two. Yeah, you're quite possibly going to hear about power cuts. They tested it last year, you remember? Yeah, all them down London, all they did were bitch and moan about what time they were going to get home. I wonder how they'll be bitching and moaning now when it's fucking winter and it's fucking cold. You've no fucking heat and you've nothing to fucking cook with.
But we have turned a corner and the escape route is in sight. We must hold out against the virus until testing and vaccines come to our rescue and reduce the need for restrictions.
Oh yeah, we need to save him from this virus, don't we? You know, that virus that's in you. You know, that terrorist threat. You need to save him from yourselves. That's what he meant to say. See, if you pick up on what they've actually said and the way they've said it, you see, you're possibly carrying a virus. So that means you're a threat to the nation. And people are terrified, so you're a terrorist. You're a terrorist threat and need identifying. You've already had most of your funds cut off. So they need to identify everybody. That's why they want your details for this track and trace bullshit. So we can get back to normal once we've, taken everybody's details. Because you're a fucking terrorist in your own fucking country, in your own fucking home.
And everyone can help speed up the arrival of that moment by continuing to follow the rules, getting tested and self-isolating when instructed, remembering hands, space, space, and pulling together for one final push to the spring when we have every reason to hope.
It goes on about rules and instructions. What the fucking hell's he pulling out of his arse? You need to follow the rules and instructions and yada yada yada, and you see him pulling his hands back out of his arse. The fuck? Maybe his battery fell out.
And believe that the achievements of our scientists will finally lift the shadow of this virus. And Mr. Speaker, I commend this statement to the House.
Can I just say, the Prime Minister, it's a big statement, he ran 3 minutes over.
He ran 3 minutes over. Somebody should have fucking run over him.
So can I say to the opposition an extra 2 minutes into the SNP?